Leadership Academy, India's top coaching institution for civil services preparation. Join us online to get most enriching experience from best faculty with excellent notes and specially designed courses. To join the batch, download Nandipayas Academy app from Google Play Store. For more information, contact 9511 280 465.
Hello everybody, welcome you all. Let's continue with Karl Marx. We are entering into the last phase of sociological thinker Karl Marx. We have already finished our given syllabus as per the UPSC in the 4 topics, that is historical materialism, mode of production, alienation, and the last one was class struggle. But without a proper analysis, that syllabus will be incomplete. Without critique, our syllabus or understanding will be incomplete, and of course the answers will be incomplete. We talked about ideas given by Karl Marx. Those were his own opinions. Those were his own ideas that need not to be, you can say, accepted by us in its complete sense, in its entirety, as it is. We must have a second view, second opinion regarding the concept. What critics and other sociologists talk about it, we must have the idea of those, right? So now in this session, we are here to now discuss the sociological critique on Karl Marx. Firstly, Karl Marx, the ideas of Karl Marx are criticized or alleged of being utopian in nature. A utopia, we can smell rebellion in it, but of course the idea or the utopian nature of Karl Marx is somewhat hidden. Many have observed that this idea is very utopian nature, very daydream-like concept. Before actually criticizing the concepts, individual concepts of Karl Marx, let's first discuss about what functionalists talk about Karl Marx. Now, I consider that you are thorough with the idea of functionalism and what functionalists might talk about Karl Marx. As both functionalism and conflict perspectives are the part of positivism, but functionalist and conflict perspectives stand opposite to each other. The functionalist will look to any social institution, organization, social relationship in its functional format, in its contributory format, in its positive role type concept towards the social structure, organization, maintenance, continuity, and well-being of the society. Whereas the conflict perspective, including Marxism and feminism, will question the very role of that social institution and organization. Question in a critical format. And that's how functionalists have criticized Marx of being utopian in nature. The very idea of the social structure of Karl Marx has negative sense. According to functionalists, including Davis and Murray, Parsons, right? They all gave idea that everything had certain positive role. Every single organization, institution have positive roles to play in society. And as society is continuing itself throughout the ages, there might be some, of course, the case of, you can say, of positive role. You can imagine that Marx talked about equality, equal distribution of resources, communal ownership by all, dictatorship by proletariat, equality and everything. But can you imagine, is it really going to work? Imagine that if there is no motivation to work, no motivation to earn more, no motivation to accumulate a little amount of surplus, will you work with inner motivation? If there is no reward for your skill, if there is no reward for your hard work, if there is no reward for your ideas and innovation, or if there is no reward for your extra efforts, why will you work? Imagine that. If there are no rewards, no extra income, no ownership over factors of production, even if you work for long hours, even if you work significantly in that corporation, even if you manage or dedicate more efforts to that work, you are not going to get any additional single penny or separate ownership. Then why will you work to that great efforts? And that's how equality is the cradle of creativity. According to functionalists like Davis and Murray and Parsons and all, they envision that if there is going to be equality in society, no one will work to their best efforts. No one will be motivated to come out of their great skills. Because there is no motivation to work hard, right? And indirectly, they are telling that the very model of social stratification, the very model of layering the society, ordering the society in terms of the talent, in terms of the classes, is the very basic motivation for society to continue, without which society won't continue. The model of stratification, the model of unequal rewards, the model of the higher or the lower positions based on your talent is called as stratification model. Davis and Murray are the thinkers. According to these thinkers, social stratification model is functional, right? Social stratification, like class structure, plays very positive role in society. Unequal rewards plays very positive role in society. Those who are talented, they get motivated to occupy those positions which are functionally more important than others, right? And that's how social stratification is functional, where the talented people are occupied. They occupy the best functionally important positions, and that's how the talented people will get the functionally important positions in the society. They will work for the good of society. They will manage society very well, and that's how society will function to its best. Imagine a district collector. He prepares for the examination or conducted by UPSC civil service examination very hard. It might take 4 to 5 years on average to get to that position. Hundreds of books, hundreds of current affairs, thousands of websites, around 1 million concepts. After that, you pass that examination, you crack that examination. That too with very unsure, right? Or unpredictability. You take those efforts, you use your best talent, and if you are selected, you get a very powerful position in society, a very lucrative position in society, very functionally important position in society, so that you can manage the society very well. Your role as a district collector or IAS will become so important, or because of which, or because of your single decision, at least million people will get affected. At least million. And you are working for good of society. So how can you tell that the social stratification system of unequal rewards plays negative role to society? Actually, it plays positive role towards society. It is proved by functionalists. And that's how the very idea of Marx of establishing the society on egalitarian lines is utopian, first of all. And if it is, or at all, the society is organized on communism line, ideal type of communism, the society won't progress. There will be de-skilling. Though talented people won't come forward because there is no additional report. Secondly, Max Weber has criticized Karl Marx regarding the bipolar structure of society given by Marx. According to Marx, the structure is bipolar, where the bourgeois will occupy the top position and rest position will be occupied by the, or you can say, according to Marx, there are only two stratas in the society. There are only two stratas in the society. The stratas are called as a bourgeois, or the class, upper class and lower class. But what Max Weber has observed, a four-class structure. That is the octagonal structure. Okay? Some thinkers or in some references, it is referred like this. This model is given by Max Weber, octagonal model, where there are four classes. According to Marx, only two classes, but Max Weber has observed a four-class structure. We are not going to need the technical names of the classes, but as we are going to cover these four classes while we are doing with Max Weber, the next thinker. But to name few, the uppermost class, according to the Max Weber's model or Max Weber's observation, is the propertied upper class. The propertied upper class. The propertied upper class. The second class in Max Weber's observation is propertied white collar workers. Propertied white collar workers. The third class is petty bourgeois. Petty bourgeois, and the lowermost class is manual workers. Are you getting me? So according to Max Weber, there are four classes actually instead of two, as Marx predicted. Marx predicted that when the capitalism will reach at its zenith, at its peak, there will be class polarization where only two classes will survive. But Max Weber talks about the four-class structure. In addition to that, Max Weber has also criticized Karl Marx regarding the process of class polarization. According to Marx, earlier there used to be three classes. With the process of, by the way, the first class is nothing but bourgeois. This is petty bourgeois and proletariat class, right? With the process of bourgeoisization that we talked about in the last session of class struggle, the process of bourgeoisization and with the process of proletarianization, the class structure gets polarized. The class structure gets polarized. This is called as the process of polarization. Or class polarization. Are you getting me? With the process of bourgeoisization and proletarianization, the three classes will reduce themselves into a two-class structure, that is polarization of classes. But contrary to this process, what Max Weber has observed, Max Weber observed actually opposite to it. What Max Weber observed is called as proliferation of middle classes. Proliferation of middle class. Earlier we talked about the class structure model given by Max Weber, which will have the four classes. After that, instead of having two classes, the class structure will accumulate itself into a three-class structure according to Max Weber, where it will have just like the same model as it is, the bourgeois proletariat, and the middle layer will be called as the middle class. But instead of the outside arrows, the arrows will be somewhat like in opposite direction. Few members of the bourgeois community will experience downward movement, and few from the lower classes, that is proletarian classes, will experience the upward mobility, and they will start accumulating themselves into the middle class. And that's how day by day, the middle class will start expanding and expanding and expanding. And it might look something after a particular point of time. This is called as the proliferation of middle class, where we are observing the expansion of middle class. Middle class will start expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding. Why? Because few members from the bourgeois community will lose their status, will lose their wealth, will lose their powers, and they will again enter into the middle classes. And few from the proletarian class, with the increasing situations of their income, wealth, accumulation of wealth, property and everything, they will move towards middle class. They will be called as now as middle class, and slowly and gradually the middle class will start expanding. Instead of what Marx predicted as the class polarization, Max Weber predicts that instead of class polarization, what is actually happening? Proliferation of middle class. This is the fact or the truth of society according to Max Weber. Firstly, in the last argument, in the second point, we argued that instead of having a bipolar model, there will be four classes, and in the last it will have three classes like middle class, the bourgeois and proletariat or the manual laborers. And in the third point in the critique, we argue that on the basis of Max Weber, instead of class polarization, the society will undergo the proliferation of the middle classes. Right? At the same time, Max Weber is also again recognized for the fact that, or another critic on Marx. The fourth point again regarding Max Weber. First of all, let's recall the idea of class struggle, by the way, right? Given by Marx. According to Marx, when the situation of alienation arises, when the situation of alienation or the class consciousness, true class consciousness, true class, by the way, true and false are the two concepts that we discussed about the class consciousness. If it is class in itself, it is false class consciousness. If it is class for itself, it is true class consciousness. And the true and false class consciousness are the two consciousness out of which the true class consciousness is much important, which is called as the subjective, right? The alienation or the true class consciousness will ultimately result into what? It will result into a revolution or class struggle. But Max Weber observes that instead of going for class struggle directly out of this alienation hall, the labor class will explore for the other options. They won't directly go for the revolution. So Max Weber gave the idea exploration of other options instead of class struggle. They might go for crimes, robberies, and just like Luddite Revolution was all about in the world history syllabus, right? They went for dismantling the machines, they went for breaking down the machinery industries and everything. But they did not organize themselves in the labor movement format or the class conflict format. Fourthly, or the fifth argument is given by very famous sociological thinker okay, so we'll start with that argument first. We'll discuss that argument first instead of naming him. That concept is called as decomposition of labor and decomposition of capitalists. First, we'll understand the concept. According to Ralph Dahrendorf, sociological thinker, what he talks about, think of the idea given by Karl Marx regarding labor or the proletarian class. He called it as a homogeneous class, right? They will have equal identity, equal interests, equality in all terms. But Ralph Dahrendorf, one important sociological thinker, he talks about both the classes like bourgeois class or proletariat class. They are not homogeneous in the complete sense. There are different sections and segments among the bourgeois community. At the same time, there are different classes among the proletarian class itself. Let's take an example. For example, in a company, let's say a Maruti Suzuki plant, there is a group of the shareholders or the real owners of the company. That is one group. Second group is of the managers who actually manage the company, but they don't manually work in the company. They don't go for fitting the equipments or the machineries in the car, but they manage the company. They act like rulers, de facto rulers, management group, you can say that, a managerial class. one is owner class, managerial class, and then rest of the others will treat them as a labor class. Now, I would like to notice you that above the labor class, there are two classes. First of all, the real owner class, and second is managerial class. But according to Marx, they form a group of bourgeois class, those who rule the labor class. But in bourgeois class itself, we have recently proved that yes, we have two different classes, that is managerial class and owners class. And the managerial class and the owners class again will have somewhat contradictory interests. And the bourgeois class, which constitute, let's say for example, we can explain with the help of a diagram. Again, a same diagram where we are talking about now this triangle, the bourgeois triangle. Okay. So I will magnify it in the size. This is a bourgeois triangle. Okay. This triangle is a bourgeois triangle here. In bourgeois, we have two different communities, owners and managers. And in this shape, which is a proletariat class, we have different kinds of labor. Let's say for example, skilled labor, semi-skilled labor, right? Unskilled manual labor, can you observe something here? Bourgeois class is divided among two separate groups. At the same time, the labor class is also not a homogeneous group. Exactly what Dahrendorf, a sociological thinker, has observed this concept as decomposition of labor, as labor is separated into three different groups, arranged into three different groups, and the capitalists, that is the owners, are also you can say decomposed into two separate groups, and both these groups have different interests, and all these three labor classes have different interests. The interest of the skilled laborers will be different than the unskilled laborers. Their pay scale will be different. Their level of alienation will be different, and everything. And that's how as their interests are decomposed, there is constant case of competition among them. The unskilled laborer will try to compete with the skilled laborer. The skilled laborer will try to show their status. We belong to upper labor class, middle labor class, lower labor class. And that's how, because of this separation of the different interests, these groups will have a continuous sense of competition among them, at the same time with the larger structure, right? And that's how the interests are getting decomposed and they won't unite. The labor class, as they have different and competing interests, they won't unite for a revolution. They won't unite. They won't generate true class consciousness. They won't generate class for itself consciousness, according to Dahrendorf. And the possibility of revolution is remote in that sense. The possibility of revolution is remote because of the decomposition of the interests and competition among the labor class itself. Because this class will aspire to become this class, they will have a jealousy or a competition among each other. Nextly, the idea, Marx's ideas are again criticized or contended on the argument that now it is going to be the sixth argument, I think. Yeah. The sixth argument is based on very important notice, very important observation. Few societies were organized on the lines of communism, few societies like USSR, China, few Latin American countries, they fought their struggles, they fought their class struggles and revolutions on the Marxist lines. They organized the societies on communism lines. But what is going on today in the societies? Have you observed? They dreamed for communism. They set the goals of equality and communism before them. But what is going on in the societies today? No society, not a single one, who claimed that we organize ourselves on, including Cuba, who organized themselves on the lines of communism. In each of these societies, communism in its complete sense does not exist. Rather, surprisingly, many of these countries are reorganizing themselves on the capitalist lines again. That means communism is utopia actually. It can be proved that, it can be argued that, we are not claiming it as a utopia, but it can be argued that whether communism or communistic mode of production, a communist mode of production or egalitarian society, whether is it a utopian idea, because the facts prove that. In USSR, in China, Latin America, many private companies, many capitalist companies, many multinational corporations are propelling. They are making huge profits. They are making the huge, they are occupying the huge markets. What is the Belt and Road Initiative by China? What is China-Pakistan Economic Corridor? What is going on in South China Sea? What is going on in Ukraine regarding Russia? What about the arms deals of Russia with other countries? Why Russia sells its oil to the European countries? All these answers, all these questions point to one fact that, on one argument that, whether communism is utopia or whether communism is a reality. Right? So many sociological and political thinkers argue that it was just like a daydream. It was a utopian concept. It has no relevance in its practicality. It has not been proved anywhere in any society that Marx was right. Not a single society till today has naturally transformed itself into a new mode of production or the last mode of production, that is called as the communist mode of production or socialist mode of production. Rather, we have been in the capitalist mode of production since, let's say, at least 200-300 years from the Industrial Revolution and all, 1750s, something like this. Now we are entering into the around 300th year, right? Something. Capitalism is nowhere to go, at least till now. And that's how communism, the relevance of communism, the truth about communism, the reality of communism is being questioned. Isn't it true? That was a valid argument. Relevance or utopia, including Cuba, Russia, China, and many of these countries are organizing themselves on the capitalistic lines, capitalistic mode of production. Okay. Now, let's talk about something about capitalism. Because Marx, who is the prime most enemy of Marx, it is capitalism and the capitalists. So first of all, let's talk about it and create a proper conceptual understanding about capitalism. Have you heard about the word compassionate capitalism? By the way, let's talk about first of all an example. Have you heard about Muhammad Yunus? Muhammad Yunus belonged to Bangladesh. He's a Nobel laureate and he won his Nobel Prize for his famous Grameen Bank model. Through his Grameen Bank model, he gave, or the Grameen banks which were organized on the socialistic principle, they forwarded credit to the self-help groups of the women. The self-help groups of the women started saving few small amounts they used to deposit in the banks, and in return of that deposits, the banks give these SHGs loans. And out of those loans, these self-help groups of the women, they organize themselves into an industry, a small industry. They produce something, they sell that, they earn profits. Technically, it is a capitalistic mode of production, or it is a capitalism, by the way. The women are nothing but organizing an industry, a factory, irrespective of size, but it is a factory. They are selling the product, they are getting profits out of it, but the profits are actually used for well-being of their lives. They belong to the poor community, they belong to the disadvantaged communities, and instead of creating inequality, instead of, you can say, expanding inequalities, these self-help groups and the industries like Lijjat Papad, Amul, the self-help groups in Bangladesh, India and many countries are the important tools of poverty alleviation. They are creating income equality in the society. They are spreading prosperity among the poor classes. So how can you say that capitalism always create inequalities? Capitalism always create class polarization. Capitalism always create class distinction. How can you say that? In case of that SHGs, who is the bourgeois here? Those women, are they exploiting their laborers? No. And that's how Marx has used a limited understanding of the term capitalism, or secondly, we can argue that, or the capitalism is evolving itself into a different concept, a mature concept, more egalitarian, eco-friendly, sustainable concept. Can I write that point here? A compassionate capitalism is the term used by Mr. Narayan Murthy. Mr. Narayan Murthy is a kind of capitalism which takes care of the social structure, social equality, environment, education, everything. Have you heard about, by the way, CSR? What is CSR? Corporate social responsibility. Through CSR, many corporations actually try to minimize social ills like inequality, poor health, poor education. Like Muhammad Yunus model of Grameen Bank and SHGs in India. This is nothing but a capitalistic model, but it is nowhere exploiting the proletarian class. And they are not treating themselves as the bourgeois class. And that's how the idea of capitalism needs to be revisited. the definition of capitalism needs to be expanded, and Marx has limited or narrowed down his understanding of capitalism to a very particular term, particular understanding, particular meaning. According to Marx, capitalism is nothing but an industry where a group of people will work as laborers or proletarian group, and another group will exploit them unnecessarily, and that group will be called as bourgeois class. But we are observing a different kind of capitalism, a different kind of social structure, economic structure that is not necessarily exploitative in its nature. And through these examples, we can argue that, of course, capitalism is not all about exploitation. And that's how Marx stands not that much relevant to explain the current capitalism that is, you can say, taking a form in today's world. And we can of course say that, or we can ask one question to ourselves: is capitalism showing its, you can say, evolution again, or adoption, or not adoption by the way, adaptation? Is capitalism adapting to the social problems? Right? Is it adaptation by the capitalism? That can be a solution, or that can be a good question, by the way, that to ask to ourselves. Instead of losing relevance, capitalism is showing intellectual maturity in the form, and that is how it is reorganizing itself into different forms that won't, or that are far away from exploitative models. And the new models of capitalism are coming forward that is changing the very definition of capitalism. It can be the possibility of adaptation by the capitalism. Right? Now, on this argument, we can argue that, of course, Marx's argument about capitalism are somewhat not that much relevant, but beyond that, we cannot deny the fact that Marx has given a very systematic understanding of the classes, capitalism, progress of society. With the help of Marx's ideas, A.R. Desai has explained India's development and India's class struggle also, which is much more relevant. Why India joined its hand in its national movement, the study is called as the social background of Indian nationalism, is the Marxist explanation of India's freedom struggle. Quite a good explanation, by the way, right? And that's how we can say that many societies can be explained, many societies can be understood, many social structures can be understood with the help of Marx, and to much extent, Marx stands relevant to study the present capitalistic society. Just a few things that needs some adaptations to modifications. Okay, I would like to again conclude this session with a good note on contribution of Marx. Despite all these critique and advantages, Marx has hugely contributed to the discipline of sociology, political science, economics likewise. And that's how it is called as a founding father, or we can call it as a vision of sociology, a vision of society, or it has provided a vision for sociological researchers to create equality. It has again a continuous inspiration for the social activists, sociologists and all to create equal society, egalitarian society. Right? Thank you very much for this session. Now, finally I can conclude. We are done with Karl Marx, and in the next sessions we are going to enter into the new sociological thinkers according to the syllabus. Thank you very much.
Jnandeep Academy, India's top coaching institution for civil services preparation. Join us online to get most enriching experience from best faculty with excellent notes and specially designed courses. To join the batch, download Jnandeep Academy app from Google Play Store. For more information, contact 9511 280 465.